Welcome, everyone, to reading number 399 of the It's About Time Writers Reading Series. Bravo, you guys make it happen. I've seen a lot of names that are familiar tonight in the audience, and I just always want to say, come back, sign up. I still have some openings, and I would love to. I see also some people who are set up to be reading, which is Bob, Sari, and so, but continue to contact me, and I will have a few openings for this summer. And I have some, big doings to do with the newly appointed Seattle Civic Poet, who is going to launch our January 2024 series next year. And I'm also working to schedule Rena Priest, who is the current Washington State Poet Laureate. So very exciting stuff. But for tonight, thank you for spreading the word and being such a wonderful supportive community of one another. We're going to be hearing from Sylvia Byrne Pollack, Amanda Hartzell, and Jared Leising. And our first reader tonight is Sylvia Pollack. Sylvia was raised in a music-loving family in Batavia, New York. In the wake of Sputnik, for all the scientists in the crowd, she chose to study science with a BA in zoology from Syracuse, a PhD in developmental biology from the University of Pennsylvania. Hello to your former Penn colleague. And an MA in psychology from Antioch University. She is a research professor emeritus after a long career in cancer research at the University of Washington. And following a trip to Antarctica in 2007, Sylvia began to focus on poetry. Her poems appear in Floating Bridge Review, Crab Creek Review, Clover, and Antiphon, among other print and online journals. She's a two-time Pushcart nominee, won the 2013 Masons Road Winter Literary Award, was a 2019 Jack Star Writer, and completed a residency at the Mineral School in 2021. She lives in Seattle with her wife, Molly McGee. Her collection, Risking It, was published by Red Mountain in 2020. I knew her when. Welcome, Sylvia.
Thank you, Peggy. Thank you all for coming. I've known Peggy a long time now, and I think I mentioned earlier when some of us were chatting that she really got me back to writing after this trip I took to Antarctica, and I came back, and a friend who was going to things at Cancer Lifeline told me about her Writing for the Moment group, and I joined in with that. And I want to thank Amanda and Jared for reading with me too, and hello to East Coast, West Coast, everybody dear to my heart who's here tonight. I hope somewhere out there, I don't see her, but it's also Susan Gardner, my editor at Red Mountain Press. Well, I'm working on a new manuscript, and I want to read you some things that I hope will be published in that book eventually. For those of you who've read Risking It, there's several characters in there. There's the deaf man, and there's a talking rock named Gregory, but there's also a woman named Letitia. And Letitia has been demanding that she get more attention, so she's going to be kind of the centerpiece of this new book, hopefully in the context of her family and all the other things that happen. I want to start out with a piece called Pebbles. It's a prose poem, talks about an experience that I expect many of you have had. And well, here goes, Pebbles. Just as she rises into the foam of morning, starts to surf, a phrase, an alliteration of words grabs the nape of her mind in its teeth and shakes so hard she almost reaches out for pen and paper to capture this wild thing, glistening in dawn's first rays. But before she can roll to the edge of consciousness, beach herself in day, the relentless undertow tugs her back into the brine of dreams, where her fierce and potentially earth-shattering idea dissolves into meaningless syllables that later, at breakfast, haunt her, like pebbles against a bedroom window, at dusk. Yeah, that was one sentence. So Letitia has a lot of memories, and this next poem is about exactly that. Letitia's memories are silent films, slapstick and melodrama, projected onto old white sheets hung inside her skull. If she wants a soundtrack, she has to create it herself. Memories blur and emulsions molds on precious 35 millimeter Kodachrome slides, evidence of her family, her childhood, her dogs, Lassie and Bambi. She squirrels letters, photographs, clippings, opera programs, museum tickets, in those 8 by 11 by 4-inch boxes on shelves in her study. She can't remember what's in the boxes. Who cares what's in the boxes? A memento is not the memory. Memory requires mind, electrical waves sweeping over the cortex, sweeping cobwebs from corners, swapping one year with another, one face with another. Flux of memory trails through forests of fact and fiction. Memories do not stay stacked neatly in boxes, but dribble, foam, seep, sublime onto the rug, into corners, over windowsills, flow down the cupboards on the side of the house. They trip her up when she goes outside to water the garden. Tigers of grief pounce when her back is turned. Sudden tears on the anniversary of her mother's death, even though it was more than 50 years ago. To look back is to flirt with becoming a pillar of salt. But, says Letitia, it adds needed flavor to whatever I'm stewing in today. Well, as I'm sure you know, dopamine is one of the neurotransmitters that's a feel-good molecule. And this poem is called Desperate for Dopamine. Brain cajoles, just one more game, another hand of solitaire, one more chocolate kiss. She acquiesces, creates her own stimulus, own reward, over and over until the entire northern sky is painted with swirling green and yellow lights. She doesn't see the polar bears, hungry and angry, coming for her. Her presence is stimulus, her flesh a reward in the rapidly warming wilderness. Desperate for rewards, we drill more and more wells in the tundra, block yet another salmon run for financial frisons. Addicted, we abdicated our role as protectors of the planet, embracing the next quick hit. Glassy-eyed, she stares at the mercury rising, watches the water come to a boil, unable, not knowing how to get out of hot water. Well, Letitia's born in October. She's a Libra, and she uses that as an excuse for a lot of things. So, Libra. The tang of apples, pounded to curbside sauce by passing cars on October afternoons, lingers into chill nights, insinuates into dreams of travel and death. How many more chances will she be given? How many more will she take? Inching across this high wire, words strung between poles. A dialectic she must trust will be wide enough for her foot. If there are answers, where do they perch? In what seas do they glide? She doesn't need to grasp them. A glimpse will do, a flash of red feathers, sun glistening on scales. Here at the circus, thrills and elephant dung mixed with straw, sweat, and spun sugar candy. The rings are inviting. Each day, she performs acts of faith, acts of yearning. Each day, she practices turning away. For those of us who live here in the Pacific Northwest, really find winter solstice a very important holiday because things are so dark, and then you know it's going to get better. So this is a poem about winter solstice. Winter solstice unfolding. Someone gets up early, paints the sky luminous blue, hangs the sun as far south as it can go. Longest night balanced by brief, glorious day. One of life's trade-offs. Today is a triumph. Azure skies, crisp temperature. It's time for dreams. They come out of the blue, bizarre or grotesque. She doesn't get to choose. Falling or flying or dying, prancing naked, failing tests. Images in primary colors or soft, subtle shades. Images retrieved from her memory's vaults. Petra, Big Ben, Cayuga Lake. Faces of mother, lovers, pets show up out of context, but it's clear who they are. At this time, when the scrim between their world and hers stretches sheer, her dear departed ride the memories in, play at O'Keeffe or Pollack or Picasso, fill the canvas of her brain with their art. And as many of you know, I love Whidbey Island. I lived there off and on for years, sometimes more on, sometimes more off. And we still try to go out there for little vacations. We just had a 2-night nano vacation up in Langley. And if you haven't been to Whidbey, come enjoy it. So these last two poems are both set on Possession Point, which is the very southern tip of the island, which is where I lived. December morning at Possession Point. We yearn to know what's out there, but still distract ourselves with bowl games, riffs on reindeer, miracles on 34th Street. Our horizons are so limited, but what I can see on this December day is miracle enough for me. Gray morning sky, cat's paws on the water, while wind tiptoes the shore, sniffing at salt-soaked logs, scratching itself on barnacle-bedecked rocks. The barnacles, distanced from us by evolution's endless experiments, are numerous as stars. Water, wind, gulls, herons, and there, just 50 yards offshore, a pod of orca, black and white constellation, worthy of a place in the sky with Leo, Aries, Orion. The orcas speak in clicks and whistles beyond our atmosphere into, through star-speckled space. And for a change of season, but still on Whidbey, summer day. One sunny summer day, she takes the Mukilteo ferry to Whidbey Island, follows country roads south as far as she can to Possession Point. At low tide, walks the barnacle-encrusted shore, past weathered cabins, steps on discarded shells of mussels, crabs, clams, doing her bit to grind shells to sand. This is not a sandy beach. Covered with ankle-turning stones, it demands her full attention as she walks. She pauses, looks out at Possession Sound's wind-stroked waters, surging between this island and the continent she left only an hour or two ago. Flotillas of glaucous, gray, and herring gulls float on waves. Sandpipers and sanderlings skitter along the beach, just out of reach, intent on feeding while the tide's still out. She hadn't thought to bring a lunch, although these salt-scoured logs would make a perfect picnic spot, inviting her to prop her feet, lean back, relax. In a far corner of her mind, a warning chimes. The tide has turned. Wave by languid wave reclaims the beach for creatures of the intertidal zone. Whelks and sponges, sea stars, limpets, barnacles, anemones. Liminal, like Letitia. They're neither here nor there, but both. Adapted to constant change and thriving. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. That's lovely. Swim in your words. You're so exact. Okay. Let's see. Now I have to do something, which is to share screen so that Denny can share his piece. Okay, Denny, where are you?
Oh, I'm right here. This is about 2 minutes. So I've got a few seconds here to explain myself. I write, I guess, visual concrete poetry a lot of the time, and it's basically spontaneous composition, no editing, just whatever I write in whatever shapes I write. So there's openness. So this can be, I type this to read in a particular order, but it's actually not necessary. So there's essentially 17 pieces in this checkerboard of checkered sketches. My checkered past stood in plaid, trousers and khaki, hat on the parquet floor, 2 squared makes 4 corners. In a word, a moment of now by an infinite series of now. It's okay not to know where to move on the checkerboard of chances taken. No one much does, even those who say, show me Missouri. Coal train pause on a track, thunder blue, note blast forms a signal, the brakeman reads. Breath white to the sight, condensed fog melt, freight whistle, dawn and rumble. One writes, talks, draws, erases the embers even as they burn to the touch. Another balks, places bets on the races, trims the sails of their luff. It's a tough tooth to crack on a pearl from the can of clam chowder, toasty warmed. On the teeth of another can, embers red glow in the hobo stove. Thunderbird, jargon, and jaguar ran where ram-bent horns blow of spring. Random nice chance, the bird's neck lights randomly, lighten up, say, this talk is chirp. Chic to windward, emir to starboard, pasha dead ahead, the prince of paupers hard alee, harbors and rumors on the high sea. This ethos, a pathos, and the bathos, my kingdom for an outdoor shower in a lemon tree. Patchwork garden, quilt of mosaics, prosaic as the plate stealers. Chapter 15 repeated chapter 5, but that's okay because I needed the reminder. And the ferry, Men follow oarlocks in hand to cross the channel, 1 minute at a time out, side indeterminate, checkered boards turned sideways. Tell us the telos of the teleology, the beach-bleached bones of ancient trees. Thank you.
Thank you, Denny. And as a sales pitch and reminder, it is Denny's artwork that is the cover for the It's About Time reading series anthology. So, dear writer, we never know what Denny is going to do. Never. Thank you. It'll always be interesting. All right, Amanda, if you want to say hello, I will introduce you.
Hi, everyone.
Cool. Amanda is the author of not one, but 2 forthcoming poetry books, The Heart Never Pretends to Be a Beautiful Muscle, and Glowing Animals. Her work was nominated for the Pushcart Prize and Best of the Net, and appears in Breakwater Review, Carve Magazine, The Knickknackery, and New Letters, among others. She holds an MFA from Emerson College in Boston, lives and writes in Seattle with her husband, son, daughter, and their dog. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you. Thanks, Peggy, for hosting, to Sylvia and Jared for reading too, and for Denny and all the other open mics that will be here, and for everybody attending. It's really great to have this community here, for everyone to keep showing up. $3.99 is crazy. That's great. I'm so happy to be part of this. I'll be reading a few poems tonight from both of my books. My first book is rooted in themes from fairy tales. So the woods, the wolf, the forbidden room, the dark, and it repurposes those images as aspects of motherhood and marriage. So my first poem is called Unknowing. Even horses know they are just horses. Even gulls know distinction from falling. Even forests know how to disturb, lose daughters, permit fields their sudden light. Even the dog knows I'm leaving. The door broken from both sides by dust and lightning. Even I know the worst thing. Light creeps in, and here, if you stare too long at unripe fruit, pistil and petal, photos of lovers before you swarmed into their bodies, waving matchsticks. What's to see except the greed and fire in your own heart, beating against wind, that unknowing monster we call heart. The second poem is called Everything I Learned About Women in Movies. When my son was first born, we had no idea what a sleep schedule was. He was our first. We just stayed up ungodly hours and watched a lot of movies. Reclaim grace from the imposters, chiffon dresses and crosses and dust, sheep dazed in a field above a town of sentimental whores. Forget film stars, cinching waist in gray. The gymnasts lithe explosions of chalk. Leave the debutantes at dinner tables, fresh from powder rooms, shining in knife light. Let grace run screaming to heavy ghosts, but stop me if you've seen this movie before. Get to the part where silhouette undoes shadow, the scene's hands wash down to whitest bone. Skip over the drownings and beatings repeated and convenience store fires, the headaches turned heartaches of savage, delicate bodies, pretending to know what to do and singing. The other poems I'll read are from my second book, Glowing Animals. Glowing Animals came out of this idea. It was during very dry Seattle summers and the heat waves that just never seemed to end. So it was playing with this dual idea of heat and time, and how together those two elements can either create drought or they can create light and incandescence. So the poems also play with how we constantly revisit memory and constantly reinterpret our experiences to make sense of the world that we're living in and the life that we're living. The first poem is called Beginning. Birds are pieces cut out of morning, the arch of your body still in my palm. Is it really so simple? Wind, downing power, the crumbs on a knife, the storm, the appetite. Away we revise the beginning until the soap you leave on the towel is a fortune, and toothpaste in the sink, ocean foam. For us, the glowing animals no one has seen yet, no one has named. This second poem from this collection was I was having a lot of conversations about other new moms and single parents and women who resolutely did not want to be mothers. And we were talking about all the tropes of motherhood and all the stereotypes. So this is a poem that tries to reclaim some of those. It's called Wife List. Flimsy, dated, men's apron fantasies, A-line skirt, a red lip, pelvis sore with babies, and icing hard in bowls. I divorced myself from relegating carnations to their stubbled face and wearing rings to green every finger. I call a man since he says my name in his city like beads sewn into satin. We're both unopposed to bare feet on linoleum. I envy him in the kitchen and how every man enters a kitchen, like it's not handout or cathedral, just another room that satisfies with its mess and cabinets bared. He says he comes from a long line of women, but doesn't say what kind, mostly unmarried mothers, the sort who swear and run into their own jiggling arms, the sort who cut out the center of the cake. And the last poem I'll read is called Interiors. When the planet floods or chokes on carbon and whirls with people fragmenting, hoarding, finding, and leaving one another, it's good not to pray, but recite words for the earth hardened over time. Rock, stone, pebble, boulder, rubble, or the emptiness after a detonated harvest, quarry, pit, valley, revealing what's impressed, brachiopod, trilobite, urchin. A relief to know fossils are not bone, but pressure of a body remembered by stone. Just as my mind split open reveals you folded inside, nougat, amethyst, yolk spilled without growth, the center disclosing hope and refuse at once, a paper fortune. Thank you.
Thank you. I think everyone tonight is already proving the intersection of, science and poetry in all its different mediums. Thank you so much, Amanda. And thank you for, suggesting it was time for Sylvia to read again. All right, now we'll have an open mic with Bob Reeves. Bob.
Hi, everybody. I just have two short poems, and these are new, so I have to read them to figure out how to read them. Peggy was talking about diseases. This is not as entertaining as gangrene. On learning that I may have heart failure. On alternate days, I'm reduced to a clump of quivering twigs, and in between roll normality over my tongue like a wine. Loving my body from the inside, I mean forget the out, is simple warmth, simple gladness at feeling everything alive. But my heart, the tortured child, has a bewildered mind, winces as it looks here and there. I want to help it rise and walk. We wait, the two of us, for a dark beginning of night or further day, further alternate days. And this one is really on the same theme. The senses. Facing outward is the way to have an inward. Not crumpling the head down like those carnivorous veggies fixated on digestion, the dwindling buzz. The body with its fights and undergoings at its best meshes with the world and subdues it. The world, simplified, comes in and out its lungs. We cross a world to touch warm skin, every pore a long drink. Our insides are what meet when we meet, the brightly alive blood journeying. Thank you.
And, I'm sorry to hear of your recent medical woes. But if you are looking for a cardiologist who also could be a comedian, and I know some who have proved to be good storytellers, which might be a good recommendation. All right, Jared, would you like to say hello and I'll introduce you?
Yeah, thank you, Peggy.
Well, other than that, I could have Jerry introduce you. So welcome to Jared's parents. We're so glad to have you here tonight. Jared grew up in the Midwest and is the author of a chapbook, The Widows and Orphans of Winesburg, Ohio. Before moving to Seattle, he received his MFA in creative writing from the University of Houston. In 2000, Jared began teaching English at Cascadia College and continues to do so. In 2023, bravo. For the past 5 years, he's also been co-teaching a creative writing class for women at the King County Jail. Welcome.
Thank you, Peggy, and thanks to Amanda and Sylvia, and thank you, Sylvia, especially. Sylvia and I are in a poetry group together, and I really appreciate hearing her work this way in ways that are sort of outside of that group, and I'm glad she encouraged me to be here. The theme is risking it. I noticed that on the Facebook site, and so like for me, I haven't read it in a long time, and for some of you, maybe you have, and you've been in this mode doing pretty well. I haven't, and so this is sort of a risk for me. And I also think about teaching. I went back to teaching in person last year, and shortly before that, and it was sort of a risk. But I'm going to share some poems around teaching, couple poems I wrote, that are pandemic related, and then some family related poems. I have a couple of kids, and we have a new puppy as of this last weekend, so we've got a lot going on. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for being here as well. So this is a poem I realized I wrote 10 years ago. Some of these will be new, but some of these are older. And this was a poem I wrote in connection with working with Jack Straw Productions. And many of you have done that kind of work and know Joan Rabinowitz and the great work that they do. And this was at the Seattle World School in 2013. And so I was invited to come to an after-school program to help them with their writing. They'd already had some vocal coaches and people there who had been working with them and really working with immigrant and refugee kids who were going to high school at this school, which is in Seattle. And when I went in, they were practicing and kind of warming up, reading Robert Frost's Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening. And I was kind of like, why are they reading this poem? It just felt sort of, there's some dissonance for me. But then when I watched how they read it and their interpretation of it, it changed the way I saw that poem. And so I decided to write a poem kind of from a collective viewpoint that I witnessed when I was with them. So it's called Reading Robert Frost with Immigrants and Refugees. Seattle World School, 2013. Whose words these are, I had no clue. But our house was in a village too. I have not seen my family in a year. Has this ever happened to you? My little sister must think it weird to be without her mama near. Between new beds and classes we take, time passes like glances in a mirror. Today, teacher shared a photo of Frost holding a birthday cake. I reread his poem and try to imagine a frozen lake. There are so many strange new sounds my tongue and mouth just won't make. These words are tricky, hard and round. But I'm told in frozen lakes, you still drown. And it can take months before you're found. And it can take months before you're found. This is another poem that's sort of about, again, sometimes I'm really interested in students who are on the margins. I teach at a community college. It's called Cascadia College because we offer BA degrees now. And every college in Washington is doing this and dropping the community section just as the way, because it's a stigma for some people. I think, I don't know if that's around the country entirely, but we offer a couple of small programs that allow BAs, so you can call yourself a college. But I'm really interested in the students who are, you know, trying to make it and get there. And then sometimes students who don't make it, you still have to give them a grade. And many of you have heard this poem, I think, before, but it's one that I think I come back to because you still have to sort of account for them. And you don't know where they are. So this is called The Undesignated. Beyond A, C, and F's black forest exist other grades, a thin range of mountains wavering along the waterline. I, incomplete. Like Sid, who wrote before expulsion, I always made sure I wasn't sick on Tuesdays because I didn't want to miss the poetry. I had never written about solid things or things I'd done before. V is about their vanishing, their academic evaporation, like the girl whose name escapes me who wrote the story about the day her mother left her in an elevator. Just weeks into the course, before I could return her paper, she was gone. W, an official withdrawal. What I was instructed to give Brian the day after the boy died head-on, driving his mother's white car down a skinny, wet road. The grade guarantees she won't receive any more mail from the college concerning her son. Z is like V, but does not impact your GPA. It's what I gave Ashley when she disappeared, only I don't know if she escaped the boyfriend who followed her to campus, gun under the front seat, and pulled her into stairwells and bathrooms. First a black eye and bruised ribs, then bleeding before class from where he'd cut her. I still have the first draft she turned in. Do dreams have a practical meaning? And I will say that story, the last one, has a very happy ending for me personally. After a long time ago, sort of being on Facebook for a very short amount of time, this student found me and said, I'm okay, I'm alive. And so it was I'd written this before then, and then it was great to sort of hear that. And then I felt like Facebook had served me well and I was done, so it's good. Here's a couple others. This is one kind of sort of I wrote during the pandemic, and it's sort of a mishmash of songs and poems. So Steely Dan's Hey 19, for those of you who know that song. And in the Song of Myself, Whitman's 19th section, it's a long poem. It pulls from that, as well as Milton's sonnet number 19. So it's got a lot of references that kind of will weave in as we go, but it's called Hey 19. Way back when I was living in Tacoma in my potassium prime, soft enough to be cut with a knife, so young and willing. But where am I now? The float and odor of hair, this murmur of yearning. She thinks I'm crazy, but we can't dance together. It's hard times. This hour, I tell things in confidence. I might not tell everybody, but I will tell you when I consider how my light is spent. There's another one I wrote. This is more of like in response. This is sort of a nerdy one, but in asking students to use MLA citations, and as the MLA changes over time, especially with streaming services and media that we have, there's sort of these adjustments and things people have to make. But there's this term that has come out of how people have to cite things that involves a container. And so this is a story that I wrote, again, not a story, but a poem during the pandemic called Containers. And it starts with an epigraph from the MLA, which is the most boring epigraph you can begin with. But it says, when the source being documented forms part of a larger whole, the larger whole can be thought of as a container that holds the source. We've always been the source of something, self-regard, loathing, loanable funds, but what larger whole can contain us? What Netflix movie are you? The bird box was invented by the British conservationist Charles Waterton to encourage more bird life and wildfowl. More life, more fowl, play with language I shouldn't be using around a person of your caliber, whose internal diameter doesn't evade larger questions like I do. I'm sorry. Maybe I've got it all wrong. Maybe we're Russian dolls, made by Russian trolls, or just yellow onions. That might explain the tears. I'm going to end with some poems that are sort of about my kids, sort of family related. Some moments that I've enjoyed over the years that they've invited me to capture. So this one is called Sky River. So it's around the Skyhomish River, for those of you who Skyhomish River who passed by it on Highway 2. Driving east on Highway 2, my son and I agree to stop and dip our toes in the Skyhomish. We pull over, hop a guardrail, and make our way down, navigating over rocks in flip-flops. The water is bitter. I sit on a log and look across the river at two red Adirondack chairs on a sandbar. Beyond the bar, a train passes through, challenging the current, carrying fuselages wrapped in green lacquer. We clamber up to the car, and I wonder about the wings. It's strange to see something that flies without them. This is a poem that sort of interacts with Alexa, so bear with me. I'm not going to do an Alexa voice, but you'll hear something that sounds like Alexa. We can do it. It's called It's Just a Phase. It's just a phase he's going through, your wife explains, as you're wondering out loud about your teenager's disdain. He calls you a boomer even though you're an Xer. Alexa, what's wrong with my ideas? No ideas, but in things. Alexa, what phases do teenagers go through? Here's something I found on the web. According to thought.com, there are other phases of matter, such as plasma. Alexa, what's the matter? As far as I can tell, I'm working. You can tell you're not. Maybe you're going through a phase too, but is it new? You're waxing, bloated, yet you feel the opposite of full and wonder how long before starting over again. Here's this, I'll read a poem for my sister. She lives in Portland. And I wrote this a long time ago as well, but I still like it. It's called Keep Portland Weird. Keep your voodoo donuts, your velveteria. Keep your Church of Elvis open forever. Keep your city blocks worth of books in print, and I'll keep this short. Like you, I'll opt out of terrorism task forces. I'll build 10 bridges across the river. Just promise me you'll keep your acupuncture project up and running alongside the urban Iditarod and your city commission. Keep the change, and I'll start bombing churches with yarn and hills with bikes. Keep your sales taxless, your water fluoride free, and you can keep pumping my gas. Just keep your distance from Seattle an easy drive. I'll read one more. This is a poem that was, I think, on the Poetry on the Buses project when we did, I think it was around home, what home means. Number of years ago. I can't remember how far it's been. But this is called Homeopathy. There's no place like field and base and run until the cows come. No place like town and boy and grown. Away from. There's no place like stretch and free and alone with nothing to write about. No place to hang your hat and ask, where's my heart? Thank you.
It's giving me a big sigh because with each reader, I haven't wanted you to stop reading. I was having that feeling like, oh no, I hope this isn't the last one. Thank you so much. Thank you for risking it tonight and joining us here. It's lovely. I love the variety of voices. All right, last call on any open mic people. You'd have to give me a little wave or give me a flash. Turn this on. Otherwise, I'm going to say that what we'll be doing is I will be turning off the recording so that we can just chat. I would like to give a shout out to our readers for next month. Since so many people were busy doing all the wonderful events and live readings associated with the fact that the AWP, the Association of Writers and Writing Programs, will be held in Seattle this year, which I don't know if it's going to be more popular than 2024 in Kansas City. I don't want to, knock Kansas, but it seems like everybody's descending, and then they're so busy that nobody wanted to book to be online. No offense, but for those who are new, Stephanie Sahana, who I see here tonight, will be joining us with their artwork, and also Marta Sanchez, who hasn't read it. It'll be all new readers in March, including Ide Ayeye, who was was working in Seattle and now resides in Texas. So we're going to have a lovely kind of out of town and in-town lineup for March. April will mark the return of the Writer's Craft. So we will have Priscilla Long and talk about her new book. And then from then on, we'll kind of be alternating with more Writer's Craft back as being part of our readings. So it's going to be quite a year. I really put my all into lining up, like I said, all the way through January 2024 right now, which will be, and I think this is common knowledge now, that it is Shini Pai who is going to be the new Seattle Civic Poet. And so the start of the 34th season will be part of the Seattle Civic Poet program for that year. So it's going to be a great year, and I'm so glad that you're all here tonight with a record turnout, not just for 2023, since the year is young. And I hope that if you've been here tonight, you will not be a stranger, even if you don't have an old college friend from the 60s reading. This is a wonderful place to hear voices, new and experienced work, the second Thursday of every month. So I hope that we will see you here all again. By the way, Sylvia, yes, Susan Gardner is here. So bravo for everyone. And now I'm going to turn off the recording so that we can, chat.